in the ancient and scorching lands of Egypt. For generations, the children of Israel had multiple. Their numbers swelled so greatly that the land was. However, a new Pharaoh rose to the throne. He looked upon the Hebrews with suspicion and fear. The king spoke to his advisors, warning that the Israelites to crush their spirits. The Egyptians enslaved. They built the supply cities of Pithom and Ramesses. Yet, the more the Egyptians oppressed them, the more the dread filled the Egyptians, and they made the lives in the fields and under the monuments. The slaves, Pharaoh, desperate to stop their growth, he decreed that every son born to the Hebrews, but he allowed the baby girls to live, hoping to amidst this terror, a man of the house of Levi, Jochebed, conceived and bore a son, a baby. She looked into his innocent eyes and could not bear to for 3 agonizing months. She hid him. When she could hide him no longer, she devised a desperate. She took an ark of bulrushes and daubed it with asphalt. With trembling hands, she placed her beloved child in. The baby's older sister, Miriam, stood afar off. The basket drifted gently among the tall papyrus. It was then that the daughter of Pharaoh came down to wash her. Her maidens walked along the riverside, and the prince, she sent her maid to fetch it. Curiosity piqued, but when she opened it, she saw the child, and behold, compassion flooded her heart. And she said softly, Miriam, seizing the moment, stepped forward, and Pharaoh's daughter agreed. And the maiden went and called. The princess commanded Jochebed to nurse the child for her. Jochebed took her son home. Her heart soared. The child grew strong, and in time, he became her son, raised in the luxury of the palace. She named him thus because she had drawn him out of the years past. And Moses grew into a man, yet he could not ignore the blood that ran in his veins. One day, he went out to his brethren and looked upon. He saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his own. He looked this way and that way, and when he saw no, Moses hid the body in the sand, thinking his deed. However, the next day he went out and saw 2. He tried to intervene, asking the one who did the wrong why. The man retorted angrily, asking who made Moses. He asked if Moses intended to kill him, just as he had killed. Fear gripped Moses as he realized his violent act was. Pharaoh sought to kill Moses, forcing him to flee. Moses escaped to the land of Midian and sat down by a. There, he protected the daughters of the priest of Midian. He watered their flock, and in gratitude, the priest, she bore him a son named Gershom. For Moses said, 40 years passed in the quiet desert, and yet the children of Israel sighed because of the bondage. Their cry came up to God because of the bondage, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac. Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law. Suddenly, the angel of the Lord appeared to him, and Moses looked, and behold, the bush was burning. Intrigued, Moses turned aside to see this great. God called to him from the midst of the bush, saying, Moses. Moses answered, Here I am. Trembling at the. God commanded him not to draw near and to take his sandal. The ground he stood upon was holy, sanctified. God declared he was the God of his father, the God of Abraham. Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look upon. The Lord said he had surely seen the oppression of his people. He had heard their cry and knew their sorrows. God announced he would deliver them and bring them to a land. He commanded Moses to go to Pharaoh and bring the children. Moses, filled with self-doubt, asked God who he. God promised to be with him, giving him a sign that he would serve. Moses asked for God's name, so he could tell the Israelites. God said to Moses, I am who I. Still, Moses worried that the people would not believe him. God gave him signs, turning his rod into a serpent. Moses pleaded that he was not eloquent and was slow of speech. The Lord's anger was kindled, but he appointed Aaron. Moses took his wife and sons, returned to Egypt. Together, they gathered the elders of Israel. Moses and Aaron went in and told Pharaoh. Thus Pharaoh arrogantly replied, asking who the Lord was. He refused to let Israel go and instead increased. The people groaned under the new hardship and blamed. Moses cried out to the Lord, asking why he had sent him. God reassured Moses that Pharaoh would be forced to let the contest between the God of Israel and the gods of Egypt. Aaron cast down his rod before Pharaoh. Pharaoh's magicians did the same with their enchantments. But Pharaoh's heart grew hard, and he refused to heed. God then turned the waters of the Nile into blood. The Egyptians dug around the river for water to drink. Next, God sent a plague of frogs that covered the land. Pharaoh pleaded for relief, but once the frogs died, the dust of the earth was turned into lice, striking man. Even the magicians confessed to Pharaoh that this was the finger. Swarms of flies corrupted the land. Yet Pharaoh bargained falsely, promising to let a severe pestilence struck the livestock of Egypt. Not one of the livestock of the children of Israel died. Moses and Aaron scattered ashes toward heaven. Then came thunder and hail, and fire mingled. Pharaoh confessed he had sinned. But as soon as the rains, locusts covered the face of the earth, eating a thick darkness that could be felt settled over Egypt. But all the children of Israel had light in their dwellings. Pharaoh threatened Moses with death if he ever saw his. Moses replied ominously that he would never see Pharaoh. God announced one final, terrible plague that would, at midnight, the Lord would go out into the midst of Egypt. The Israelites were instructed to take a lamb without blood. They were to take the blood and strike it on the two side posts. They were to eat the flesh that night, roasted with fire. They ate in haste, with belts on their waists, sandals. It was the Lord's Passover, a night of judgment and at midnight. The Lord struck all the firstborn, and from the firstborn of Pharaoh on his throne to the captive, and a great cry went up in Egypt, for there was not a house where. Pharaoh rose in the night, summoned Moses and Aaron. The Egyptians urged the people to leave quickly. The Israelites left, 600,000 men on. They carried the bones of Joseph with them, fulfilling. God did not lead them by the way of the Philistines, lest they. Instead, God led the people around by way of the. The Lord went before them by day in a pillar of cloud. By night, he appeared in a pillar of fire to give them light. Pharaoh, regretting the loss of his slaves, 600 choice chariots, and all the cavalry. The Israelites, camped by the sea, looked up. Terror seized them, and they cried out to Moses. Moses stood firm and told the people to stand still. The angel of God, who went before the camp of Israel, the pillar of cloud came between the camp of the Egyptians. It was a cloud and darkness to the one, but it gave light. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea. The Lord caused the sea to go back by a strong east. The waters were divided, and the sea was made into dry. The children of Israel went into the midst of the sea on dry ground. The waters were a wall to them on their right hand. The Egyptians pursued and went after them into the mid. In the morning watch, the Lord looked down upon the army. He took off their chariot wheels so that they drove them with difficulty. The Egyptians panicked, realizing the Lord was fighting. God said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand." Moses stretched out his hand, and the sea returned to its. The waters covered the chariots, the horsemen, and all. Not so much as one of them remained, washed away by the. But the children of Israel had walked on dry land in the midst. Thus the Lord saved Israel that day from the hand of the Egyptians. Israel saw the great work which the Lord had done in Egypt. The people feared the Lord and believed the Lord and